Okay, what we're looking at here are the cadaver cross-sections for Bio 201 Lab Practical 3. And what these are is that looking at these parts of the brain that you looked at on the sheep brain, but now we're looking at them on a human brain and looking at them as a cross-section. So we have to understand what we're looking at. And what they've done is they've laid a cadaver out on a gurney, laying on its back, laying supine, and it's looking up at the sky. So this is anterior. They're on their back, so this is their left side, and this is their right side. Okay? So now we've got some directional terms. The other thing that we can see up here is a section number. Section 1 means it's our first cut. The cuts start at the top of the head, and as the number gets bigger, the cuts go lower and lower and lower, down through the face, the nose, the throat, the abdominal cavity, the legs, working their way down. So this tells us we're up high on these sections. You have a sheet in your note packet for section 1 of the things you need to know. The first one is the cerebrum. This whole thing here is the cerebrum. Okay? Second structure you need to know is a bit of white matter, and we can see it running from one side, one cerebral hemisphere to the other, right there and right there. These are neurons connecting one side to the other that are myelinated. So this white matter is called the corpus callosum. Third structure on your list are some spaces, and we will look at them right here, here, and here. These are the lateral ventricles. Okay? Now, they wouldn't have to indicate all of these on the exam. They might just pick one of them and say, what is this space? And you would in turn write down lateral ventricles. And then the last structure that we have here is this bit of dark matter right there and right there. Each one of those are representing a portion of the thalamus. Okay? So on section 1, these are the 4 things you could be asked. On the test, they will go in order, section 1 through section 6. They won't bounce around back and forth. There might be 1 or 2 questions per section. There is not a word bank. You just write out what your answer is. Spelling counts. So moving on to section 2. Structures we have again. Once again, we've got that whole cerebrum. This whole thing is the cerebrum. We have, once again, lateral ventricles here and there. Then our next structure is the third ventricle, and it is right there. We have the gray matter in the center, thalamus, thalamus. We have the corpus callosum. Remember, that's our white matter going back and forth as a connection. Corpus callosum. And then we have the subdural space, the space between the dura mater and the brain. And let me find a color that I think could work for this. We'll go with red again. It's this white. Where you see white, that's a space. It's a space between the skull, which has a periosteal layer of the meninges that attaches to it, and the space below it, which is then the brain itself. So there's our subdural space. These are the things that you're going to need to know on this section number 2. Okay, so moving on to section 3. 4 things on section 3. Some of them are still the same. This right here is part of the cerebrum. This right here is also part of the cerebrum. Each one of them would be considered a cerebral hemisphere. That's not on our list, but they still make up the cerebrum. At the back, here, this is the cerebellum in green. The little space or tube that we have right here represents the cerebral aqueduct. And then anterior to that, we have the midbrain. Okay, so there's 4 more sections for section 3. Section 4. Once again, we still have our cerebrum on there. All right. We have the pons. This area right there, that's the pons. We have still the cerebellum in green. And now, because we're a little more inferior than where we were a little bit ago, this is now, what was the cerebral aqueduct, is now the 4th ventricle. 2 more sections and we're done. What's this about? Go away. Just go away, please. All right, section 5. I'm not redoing this thing. Section 5. Right here, we've gone down a little further, so now we're below the pons, where the medulla oblongata is. This little space, once again, is still the 4th ventricle. And posterior to all that, we still have the cerebellum in blue. Lastly, section 6. Only 2 things to know here. This right here is the spinal cord. And we still have the cerebellum right there in red. So those are all the things you need to know for this component of Lab Practical 3. Hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to watch it again and again. It only gets better each time you watch it.